Welcome, friends. Thanks for your patience. I got a bit of a funny story for today. We had a bit of a human moment this morning. We'll start off with the first very human moment, which was my day-to-day. I obviously do analysis, I do keynotes, I also do a bit of media, and my media interview went about 40 minutes over, so apologies for lateness. There's more human stuff though. I know you'll believe this. I was going to say you won't believe this, but you'll believe this. I just started this live stream and I'm about 10 minutes into it and I hadn't clicked the go live button. So I was talking to myself, we'll redo it. It's okay. It's fantastic. I also don't have the webcam, so I can't show you what's going on here in Adelaide, South Australia. I can tell you it's not a very beautiful day out there, but I'm sure it is wherever you are. Hi to Kayat in Poland, Workman in Washington State in the US. Benno's joining us from the Nordic region. Hi to Dutch Ruler in the Netherlands and Claudio there in Portugal. This is kind of cool. I have described this new model as possibly the most exciting thing I've seen this year. I think we've had a lot of cool releases this year. We still have a new AI paper published every 8 minutes. We still have a new model about every 48 hours. I've documented now, what are we at? 692 models, nearly 700 models, and there are actually 300,000 derivative models out there on Hugging Face. So it's not that we're wanting for new tech, it's happening all the time. But this model in particular, I think, is really exciting. Hi to Vinvin in Belgium, Explorer in Florida, and Tudus Strategia AI in Hungary. Let's jump straight in. I bet you're excited about Gemini 3 Pro. That's my daily driver now. I think it is considerably better than any other model. Keeping in mind that every time you use Gemini in particular, let's go and look this up, LifeArchitect.ai/watermarking. Every time you use Gemini in particular, the choice of words in the output is deliberate. There is an algorithm behind it to choose those words, and then there is a secret watermark signal embedded in the text. If you go to lifearchitect.ai/watermarking, I talk about this in detail, and there's even some examples of how they choose the text and why they're able to Google only at the moment, why Google are able to prove that you used AI for that output. I think this might be a little concerning if in this very short term you're using Gemini to do your university work or your college work, because maybe Google will extend this watermark checking outside to governments, to institutions, maybe even to the public at some stage. But right now, every Gemini output, every Veo output, every Nano Banana output, every Imagine output has a secret watermark embedded that's very difficult to get rid of. They call it resilient in terms of it's difficult to remove. But we're not talking about that one today. We're talking about Nano Banana. You can get to it gemini.google.com. In my pre-go live talking to myself, I did mention that this model, it was kind of oddly named for a reason. When our big labs go out to testing, usually a few weeks before they deploy, they give these models a code name so that you don't know that you're using GPT-6, for example, in this other platform testing. They give it code names for a reason. The big 5 labs all do this. You see OpenAI there, XAI, Anthropic, Google, and Meta down the end. We're going to switch out Llama for Meta Superintelligence's new model shortly. But if you go to LM Arena and you're playing around with models, you'll see some silly names. Let's say we're testing GPT-6 and OpenAI have called a few versions of that different names. They might have codenamed one of them Arctic Iceberg. And so you get to compare GPT 5.1 today with Arctic Iceberg, and you say Arctic Iceberg is so much better. And then when OpenAI released GPT-6, they say 99% of the people preferred Arctic Iceberg. Well, that's exactly what's happened with Nano Banana. A whole heap of people have tested it and gone, this is great. But unfortunately or fortunately, Google have actually kept the name and they're using it within their marketing. So you'll even see the CEO talking about how incredible this particular model is and using the name Nano Banana. I'm just going to throw out to some of our older tests for a moment while I make sure that I'm logged in with the right account. There we go. That looks a whole heap better than it did. You can get to this at gemini.google.com. Down the bottom, you've got tools, create images. That just gives you a little shortcut. And I'm just going to say, create an infographic of Reggie Watts preparing for his comedy tour. He's just been here in Australia. Sorry I missed you, Reggie. I have done way too many keynotes this year, but in a good way. One of my colleagues delivered 74 keynotes to November 2025 for this year. I don't think I've hit that number, but I did feel like I was living on an airplane and in, well, I don't even use lounges these days, but in airports. And that was for the benefit of everyone. I got to work with some really cool companies, did a big roadshow for Cisco, just delivered a keynote to 3,000 nerds in Sydney for the big AI conference. Got to do the opening keynote for that one. Followed, as I got off stage, a representative from Microsoft got on stage, but it's been a lot of fun. All right, here's our output. Have a look at my prompt first. That's a really simple prompt. Remember a couple of years ago, we would write these multi-page, hundreds of word prompts. If I go back to LifeArchitect.ai/art, you'll have a look at some of the ridiculous lengths of prompts that we were getting to. We got even longer than this, but 2 years ago, we were having to get kind of hacky keywords in there to make it do what we wanted to do. Now we're at that state where we can use bad grammar, bad spelling, and it'll figure it out. After it's seen that prompt, Nano Banana Pro has thought through, using its chain of thought, using its scratchpad, using its reasoning and thinking, come up with this beautiful image. It is able to output 4K resolution. I see some questions here about watermarking. Watermarking is resilient to resizing. The way that the Google DeepMind scientists were able to get it to work means that even if you change some words in a text output, it's still watermarked. One of the ways to bypass that is just to dump it into another model and ask it to reword it. But I think you can trust people like Professor Scott Aronson there at OpenAI, who came up with their watermarking alongside another scientist, and the kinds of scientists you'd expect to be working at Google DeepMind to create something that is not easily bypassable. This one, pretty cool and pretty accurate. You'll notice there's no spelling errors in this infographic. It's grounded. It's gone and found out the kinds of things that Reggie does in his preparation. I do see one spelling error there, set list with a double L. Three years ago, 2022, 2023, even 2024, clients would ask me, so how can I develop infographics with a text-to-image model? And I just had to say, well, that's just not possible now. It's not something that you can do. We don't have the capabilities to do that quite yet. But it's kind of interesting to see that finally, after many, many years, we're there. Here's another output that I got. This is the one that I actually sent through to Reggie with the exact same prompt. Let's get rid of my head there. And it's very accurate because he has just been here in Australia and it's looked around to find the tour dates, which it also got right, the locations, which it got right, how he develops his shows. So we've got philosophy and mindset on the right side. We've got a real quote from Reggie there. Once again, we've got no or very few spelling errors. This, I think, is pretty incredible. You can try this yourself. Once again, that quote is really, really simple. Sorry, that prompt is really, really simple. Let's do something a little bit different. Let's even dig into something that I don't know very much about, which is most things in life. Create an infographic on electricity generation here in Australia. Benno, absolutely amazing that it went out and got his itinerary from the thinking and reasoning behind the scenes. Reggie didn't complain about any of this when I showed him, so I think it might even be accurate down to the level of the Nord keyboard that he uses or the Line 6 looper that he uses. Pretty cool. All right, underneath our very simple prompt, once again, it's thought through the scope. It's thought through the mix that we have here in Australia. Once again, I don't know enough about it to even judge this, but just by way of interest, this is what we get. I've even got a source citation down the bottom. I've got one spelling issue that I can see with a C instead of an O. I'm sure we could correct in some sort of application. But this is really different to what was possible last week. We just couldn't do this last week. If I run that same prompt through the second best image text-to-image model, last week this was the best image model, I don't think we'd get anywhere near the quality of what we're seeing now with this ridiculously named Nano banana. I'm happy to take suggestions. I think Nano Banana Pro at the moment is locked down to Pro accounts only, and so as usual, happy to share the love around and we can generate. If in particular you've got something that's very specific or very niche, that's always fun to test. Let's see how ChatGPT is going in the background here. In the latest edition of the memo, I showed the... see if I can get access to it. I showed the differentiator for Google, which is they use and have always used TPUs. They're up to TPU version 7, I believe. And it's kind of cool to see the differences between that in the stock market, because NVIDIA is obviously right up there, and then every NVIDIA client is also right up there, but also in performance. So if I have a look at the memo, the most recent edition, underneath the interesting stuff, and you can see this yourself at LifeArchitect.ai/memo, I talk about these Google Ironwood TPUs, and this is a full rack of over 9,000 of these TPUs racked up. I don't know why it's curved, but kind of cool to see the hospital, the birthplace, and the home of all of these models. Gemini is running from that. Google Veo is running from that. Google Imagine's running from that, and Anthropic Claude also using TPUs for inference. Cool differentiator. One of the reasons I think that Gemini is so fast while we're still waiting for, oh no, we finally get ChatGPT with a very simple image with text on it. Our second generation still coming up. I wouldn't call these infographics, but certainly you've got text and images on a picture. Not to the same extent that we get text and images on a picture like this. All right, we've got a cool quote here, or a cool request here from Simon. Let's see what I can get here. Not that one. Simon's asking us, can you please do an infographic of human existence alongside AI into the next 300 years? Isn't that a fun one? There's no wrong answer there, because it's just going to have to use its brain to the extent that these things have a brain. Let's clear our conversation so it's not using any of that context. Let's infographic of human existence alongside AI into the next 300 years. Excellent, that's fun. The images are cool as well. I've got Moo Digital here. I've got your request. Let's try it out. I don't know if I have to click create image button every time. It's also defaulted me to fast instead of pro. Oh, it's logged me out, or it's, don't know what it's doing. Let's not use that. All right, you're gonna have to have my face for just a moment and while I get this logged in again. How strange. We're having a very human day today. The list of things that have gone not perfectly right is unusual. Excellent, we'll run that one in the background. Here's our next 300 years with a very simple prompt. And it looks a lot like this. Horizontally across the top, 2025 into 2125, 2225, 2325. I would easily bet that all of these will come to pass much, much sooner. We would definitely get, I think we'll get all of these before 2040. If we get super intelligence in the next year or 2 or 3, we could get all of these instantly, but let's see. Thanks, Simon. You're very welcome. What have we got in the background here? An old granny doing a skateboard trick down a huge set of stairs. Look at that banner. That's so cool. So obviously Nano Banana Pro is doing something different and in a really interesting way. It's reasoning and thinking before it dumps the image, to the extent that it figures out, A, there would probably be a crowd watching, B, they might have a little banner, C, this is the kind of text that you might see on the banner. It doesn't look very high resolution to me. Will this even tell me its resolution? 1024 by 559. I don't think this will adjust the resolution, but I have been told that Nano Banana Pro does generate stuff up to 4K res. All right, Tommy's got a request for us here that I think might be fun. I live in Australia and my geography isn't the best even here where I live, so checking a map of North America might be beyond my capabilities, I reckon. I don't mind telling it like it is. There are some things I'm good at. There are some things I'm not good at, and proving that a map of North America is accurate might be beyond my capabilities right now. A map of North America, let's say a 100% accurate. That might be enough for us. All right, that's ChatGPT going to work for us. While we're doing that, I'm just going to check if our granny made it to 4K. I don't think it would have just by adjusting my prompt. So I'll have to figure out how I make that 4K. I've already got the Pro account, so what might I be missing to get that to do what it needs to do? All right, and then we'll compare it with Nano Banana. I'll be relying on all the Americans in the chat here to give us some proof on whether this is 100% accurate or not. Oh, and Benno, I've got yours as well. An infographic showing a fusion energy plant in the art style of Da Vinci. Silver pen drawing. I like that. Let's give it a go. Oh no, not ChatGPT. Let's... Oh, I cleared it. I told you I'd be being very human today. I tried to Alt-click this new chat to open a new tab, and while it works for ChatGPT, it does not work for Gemini. An infographic showing a fusion energy plant in this art style of Da Vinci. I'll add a comma there. Silver pen drawing. I've seen that once again, Gemini is very confused about which account I'm supposed to be using. We fixed that up for ourselves. Let's run that in the background. All right, let's check up on our 100% accurate map of North America by Gemini. Looks a lot like this. Our resolution is not good enough to be able to prove even state names on that one, unfortunately. Maybe someone can give me the hack for making that 4K, but right now I believe I'm just seeing 1024 as usual. And we'll compare that with GPT. No labels. Oh, country labels, but no state labels. Some misspellings on Arctic. Very simplistic there using the GPT Image 1 model inside ChatGPT, whereas Gemini's Nano Banana Pro is giving us something completely different. At the back here, we've got Ben's infographic showing a fusion energy plant in the art style of Da Vinci, silver pen drawing. Oh, he loved doing mirror writing, didn't he? Was that Da Vinci? Because I think we've got a bit of that going on. You'd have to put this in a mirror to get the proper output there. It's also in Latin, if I'm picking my languages right. And we can continue that conversation. We could say all in English, correct orientation, not mirror writing. It should pay attention to my instructions there, even the instructions telling it what not to do. That was our first one with the mirror writing and the splotches on the page. I think that's pretty cool. This stuff was just not possible yesterday or the day before, and now it is. Let's see if it can correct itself and put it in English for us and make the writing the right way around. Cool. It might be possible that this is already in 4K and I've been downloading the thumbnail, but if anyone has suggestions on getting our highest resolution, I'm on all ears. By the way, we are in a much higher audio resolution today. There's a lot of money invested in a completely new setup for the first time in 5 years. So for all of Lita, I used the Shure MV7 USB mic, which had some onboard processing, but I've gone all out with a Neumann and a UA Apollo Solo interface, and it's quite cool. All right, so basically I was clicking the wrong button because this one looks like it's 4K. This one is, 2816 by 1536 once I downloaded it. So opening those preview images in a new tab was only opening the 1024 pixel image, where we get the full nearly 3000 pixel image if we download it first. It did not get the reversal of text right for us, so we've still got some mirror writing here. But I reckon you could go straight to your art department with something like this, with this quality. Well, depending on how high you need your res. There's a little bit of furriness here. This is a PNG file. Maybe making it a JPEG would be better. I'm not sure. I'm not in the creative department, or at least not in the art department. This is pretty high res. This is the best I've seen in a text to image model before, and that's including Stable Diffusion, Midjourney. Let me pull that out for you. The ChatGPT stuff, the previous Imagine and Google Party stuff. To have a 3000 pixel wide image is pretty incredible. So that would be the same for everything that I've generated so far. If I pull out our North America accurate political and physical map, we can perhaps zoom in, and then you guys can flag which parts are incorrect or inaccurate. Six megabytes for this image. Once again, we've got a 2800 pixel wide by 1500 pixel high image, but that doesn't mean it's any higher res, particularly for the text. That's all a bit messy. Arizona, New Mexico, California would be in there. We've got some label here. I can't quite make out what that would be or what it was supposed to be. I bet the next iteration of this is going to be even more impressive and possibly scary for a few people, particularly artists and people who work in art departments and can obviously have their work really supported and assisted by these models, but by essentially a large language model that was trained to predict the next best token, the next best word, or the next best pixel. Back in the GPT-3 days in 2020, some of you were with me then with the leader experiments. We saw it picking the next best word and it could have conversations and it was all very exciting. Now, 5 years later, some of these achievements, some of these capabilities are mind-blowing. Thomas has a cool point here, looking forward and backward. We just looked forward, but wouldn't it be cool to depict places in the past? I'm especially interested in the Caribbean of the 18th century, especially the towns. Obviously, you can try this yourself. I don't know much about that particular region, but let's have a go with things that I know at least a little bit about. Let's do a very specific map of Perth region from pre-colonial settlement. State the year at the top. Accurate as possible. I bet you want to try this yourself, don't you, for your region? Look, I know the Perth region like the back of my hand. I wouldn't say the same for my current city or the last few cities I've lived in. I certainly wouldn't say that for the US. I could tell you a little bit about Arizona and California, and that's about it. But let's see how it goes with this one. It's going to have to use its imagination. And like I said in the latest edition of the memo, we've got people flagging its capabilities in a really interesting way. I talked about Professor Mark Humphreys. I think he's at UCLA, and he is a history professor. All he does all day is scan in old documents from the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th century, and he's been testing our latest frontier models with how they are able to translate what's happening inside those documents. This is a 1758 merchant's ledger. He shows a picture of it in his blog post, and there was some really specific detail there about because it's a merchant, about kind of grocery shopping. In this parchment or in this document, in this ledger, it was talking about sugar, which at that time was passed around in cones. It's talking about particular unit measurements that we don't actually have anymore, currencies, prices. We've got this weight, we've got pounds and ounces now, but I think it was able to reason through, think through, make connections about what was happening in the 1700s versus today. And Professor Mark said, better than any previous model or student I've encountered. This is an early version of Gemini 3 he had access to about a week before it came out. It's exciting and frightening all at once. He thinks that what might be happening is an emergent form of abstract reasoning that arises not from explicit programming, none of these LLMs are pre-programmed, but from scaling up. GPT-3, you've seen my pretty pictures of this kind of thing, went from 175 billion parameters all the way up to now we're talking about 6 trillion parameter models. I still haven't updated my viz for Grok, but I do have a pretty picture for that particular model. Let's see if we can find my pretty picture. When we scale up both the data and the training time and more, we get some really cool outputs. I don't see my Grok pretty picture. That's kind of sad. Maybe it's inside my What's in Grok paper. Yes, it is. LifeArchitect.ai/What's in Grok. This is what he's talking about when he's talking about scaling. We've come from 2020 era models or 2023 era models of very low parameter counts up to maybe we've doubled that. By the time we get over here to Grok 5, we have, 10x'd that, even 100x'd that, to get to 6,000 billion parameters. So from 33, let's say 60 billion parameters to 6,000 billion parameters would obviously be a 100x on that. And 6 trillion parameters is incredible when you give it more data. So when you give it, instead of 300 billion tokens, you actually give it 100 trillion tokens. These are the kinds of things that you can expect. Solving problems, advanced reasoning beyond human level of performance, superhuman performance. And that specific articulation of what was happening from Professor Mark, I thought was worth flagging. There are multiple examples of this happening. I documented earlier Adam Unikovsky, who has 8 Supreme Court wins, used to clerk for Antonin Scalia, saying that Claude is better than a Supreme Court justice when it comes to analysis and decisions of Supreme Court cases. That's a really, really big statement from someone who's qualified to talk about that the same way that Professor Mark is qualified to talk about scanning historical documents from the 16th century and being able to say whether that was correct or not. All right, we moved along a little bit there. Here is my prompt. Once again, map of Perth region from pre-colonial settlement, state the year at the top, accurate as possible. And it has stated that our year is 1827. Oh, this is impressive. There's a reason we did our live stream today. The reason is this is probably the most exciting thing I've seen come out this year, and I've seen a lot of things come out this year. I've documented 100 different models. We've looked at the humanoid robots that have come out. We've talked about the effect on society. But when we get down to this level, I think we're in a really interesting place. All right, Lake Munga is not there. Booragoon, we'll give it that one. Swan River is absolutely there. Herdsman Lake is absolutely there. Wodgemup and Rottnest Island is absolutely there. Do you guys know about Rottnest Island? Let's look up Quokka Selfie here, and then you'll recognize it. This is the guy that we call the happiest animal on Earth. Who's this? Hemsworth, is it? Nope. One of our celebs. When the celebrities come over, one of the first things that they do is take a photo with the Quokka. I don't know whether Reggie did or did not while he was here, but it's a really interesting and fun place to explore. It was one of my holiday destinations, and they really do look like that. They really sit there and smile at themselves like life is incredible. And one of the reasons that life is incredible for them is that they have no predators over there. There are no vehicles there. There are no dingoes or foxes or anything like that. It's just Quokka Island, and it's great. So it's got that part accurate. It's got the indigenous name or the Aboriginal name for Rottnest, Wodgemup. And it's got, from what I can see, a fairly accurate representation of what Perth would have looked like in 1827. How fun's that? You're going to have to try it yourself to be able to prove to yourself that this is doing what we're seeing that it's doing. But find one of your hobbies, something that you know a lot about, and test it on that. I still remember quite a bit about Pro Audio, so I'm going to give it a prompt in the Pro Audio space just for fun. Let's do a complex chart on mic EQ responses. Include, let's do the SM58, the SM57. We're probably going to have the Neumann KSM 105 in there. The AKG stuff. What else did we like? Might that be enough? These are still the big ones. We mentioned when we were doing the, I don't know if I have it in my history, but when we were generating the Reggie Watts stuff, it was really interesting to see that it would quote the citations underneath. So the fact that it got this 100% accurate was essentially because it had gone and provided some grounding for itself. And there are only 3 sources here. I've seen it do even more to make sure that we've lowered hallucinations as much as possible. Oh wow, this already looks incredible. I remember having to draw these charts by hand myself a very long time ago in about 2009, 2010 when I was doing this in parallel with, well, everything else. And this is kind of a cool visualization of what's possible with different microphones. I wouldn't say this one would be accurate at all, but not far off. A year or two ago, we looked at the fact that some of these models had seen 5 billion images during training. Given that this is Google and they have access to a lot of the internet, or a lot of the web, well, a lot of the internet, including your emails, including FTP stuff, including networking stuff, including messaging stuff, it would be really interesting just to have a number on that. How many images has Nano Banana Pro seen? Did it look through more than 500 billion images? Did they care about quality? Did they care about resolution when they were coming up with the data set? All these questions we don't yet have answers to, but we may. One day. Kind of fun, isn't it? Are you going to give it a go yourself? Do you have access outside of Pro? These are questions I don't know the answer to yet. I wonder if it's shown... Yeah, it's shown okay sources here. I don't think it had the proper Neumann source there, so it might have guessed its frequency response in green. I don't know if that's 100% accurate. Awesome. I think that's all I've got to say about Nano Banana Pro. I would see this being pushed around art departments quite a bit. I would see this helping you out in an office environment because it's so clever. It's got the reasoning and thinking built in. And I think we're going to hear more and more about just how good Gemini 3 is. Like I've just mentioned, I'm using it now as my daily driver. I'm aware that everything I generate is watermarked. But for me, this has, even Gemini 2.5 Pro had replaced GPT-5 for me and was already my daily driver. But I use this quite a lot for all sorts of things. Any question I've got goes to Gemini 3 now before anything else. Speaking of questions, if you've got anything, you can throw them in the chat. I don't know how much more I have to talk about from what's happened over the last few weeks, but certainly one thing I just spoke about in the media interview was the incredible performance of the Figure AI humanoid robot. They gave us some stats within the last few days. Every BMW X3 you see on the road, every 2026 model year, I reckon would have had the Figure O2's hands on it, helping out. It ran 10-hour shifts Monday to Friday, loaded 90,000 parts, 1,000 hours of runtime, and contributed to the sheet metal lifting between shelving and the vehicle across 3,000 BMW X3 cars. 1.2 million steps or 200 miles of walking around the factory. That one's really cool to see. Also would have seen, and I don't know if anyone would be too surprised about this, a leaked memo that OpenAI are very concerned about Google. There's that amazing Google AI scythe meme that I wonder if it will let me find easily. Not today. I'll show you one more thing while I'm here, looking at Google Images. That's a new app that I built with GPT-5. I would say that you can use it yourself. I don't have the steps to use it yourself to show you, but I can say that if you wanted to try it yourself, LifeArchitect.ai/Vox, V-O-X, and you have to put in your own API key and CSE ID. Maybe just talk to GPT-5 about getting them. There are a number of steps to go and retrieve those. But what's happening in the background is it's listening to me and picking up any keyword, like for example, green goat. I don't know if that's a green goat, but this is a green goat. And the intention was to have this on the screen behind me, listening to what I was saying and then generating it. I do need to put some error checking in there because it dumps in, when it can't find an image, it just dumps in nothing. But let's try pink donut. Pink donut. We need some error checking. What about, at least you could do a blue donut. So my original intention was to have an LLM listen, pick the keywords from every sentence, and then push it out to a text-to-image model. Obviously, the lifting and the latency behind that was way too heavy. So at the moment, it's just listening in and then picking out a key, or actually giving it that whole sentence, and then returning the first Google document, Google image from a Google image search. So it really, really should work with anything like a large forest. Or can we get our blue donut? No, broken image. And I don't know why it's a broken image, but that's part of the fun of this recursive coding and this vibe coding, is that we'll eventually get something that works. Once again, you're welcome to try it yourself. It was just a bit of a silly concept for when I had a panel behind me or a screen behind me, and I wanted it to pick up keywords while I was talking and show something generated, say by Stability AI. Stable Diffusion might be the fastest text-to-image model if you run it locally to get that kind of thing done. And this proof of concept was just a bit of fun. I never found our Google, OpenAI, Anthropic meme. Nah, maybe someone can post that in the chat for me. It's the one where you've got Google as the huge Grim Reaper carrying his scythe and all the other little labs down there waiting to also eat at the trough. But I've been betting on Alphabet certainly for the last many, many months. This model is incredible. You'll also be reading in the memo, and I've been waiting for this for a while, about the EU conceding that they might have been wasting time this whole time just by being regulators. LifeArchitect.ai/cheese lists people that have said, who's moved my cheese over the last few years. 2 years ago, December 2023, I went on record and said that the EU AI Act is an abomination. We then tracked the fact that they hadn't even added LLMs into their regulations until June 2023, even though they started writing years before that. Just recently, just within the last week, they said they're going to start scaling back their AI laws. So that was interesting to read, that they'd spent maybe millions of person hours creating this AI Act and then gone, oh, that's a bit silly, while the whole world was laughing at them, developing these written laws that were probably as thick as hundreds of phone books stacked up, and then gone, well, why are you doing that when you could actually be training models or contributing to the research or doing something, creating something besides laws that will be out of date by the time they passed? That's certainly the case here. Interesting to see them backtrack. Excellent. I delivered a keynote recently to a very large room of executives, and the one thing that they were most interested in was my LLM reset. So I wanted to mention it to you once more here. When I'm using Gemini, I'm always using, when I type in, where is my, oh yeah, there it is. When I default to Gemini, it defaults to this LLM reset here. And inside that prompt, you'll see it end to end, is about 200 or 300 words of things it should do. Same inside of ChatGPT. Just by default, whenever I'm talking to any of the models, inside of personalization, custom instructions, you can see the LLM reset. And what it's doing is removing, well, trying to remove 2 of the most overused words that have come out of a branch of English, of business English, particularly in Nigeria: crucial and delve. You might notice those being overused. Another 100 or so words, or less than that, of overused words in AI. M dashes, we can now, it'll actually pay attention to this part of my LLM reset. Quotes, negative parallelisms, and a little bit more. And so every time I ping GPT, it's using this system prompt before it starts responding. And that's been really beneficial. If you're at college or university, it's important to know that this will help bypass AI detectors. So the last workshop that I delivered, they were most interested in this out of anything else, was how can we tweak our prompt so that it won't flag or it won't use common words. I don't think they were so concerned about it flagging AI detectors, but obviously generating board reports or reports to clients, proposals, tenders, analysis, the kind of things that you'd push out to clients. It'd be great if that didn't look like everyone else's, and it would be great if it didn't overuse the kinds of negative parallelisms that we see through AI. So it's one of the signs of AI writing. If you'd like, you can read more about this in the Wikipedia article, but it's basically saying whenever ChatGPT uses the term, it's not just good, it's great. Not just X, but Y. That overuse of this antithesis or negative parallelisms is the other term, is really annoying. And I notice it so much, particularly in written stuff on Reddit, on Twitter, in forums. Even our AI labs are dumping out stuff that's come out of a GPT or a frontier model, not checking for removal of these, and the overuse just gets a little bit much. All right, let's jump into cool questions. Kayat's got here, thoughts about OpenAI 2026-2028 goals. Automating researchers, yeah, that's absolutely a big part of it. LifeArchitect.ai/AGI has our countdown as usual, which we haven't really seen a big movement from because it's so jagged that we've gone superhuman in things like logic, reasoning, science, maths, but we've still got just under human performance for things like, assembling IKEA furniture. We don't have 2 of the 5 senses. We don't have olfactory and taste, even though both of those are really easy to train and output. I'd like to see them before we get to 100%. We might push this to 100% even without getting those, but there are a few things in the list that we don't quite have yet. You're asking about levels of AGI. So both DeepMind, Google, and OpenAI independently released these different levels. They kind of align with each other, and I've been checking them off. It looks like both OpenAI and Google see us as being here at the level 3 expert level for DeepMind, or agentic level for OpenAI. Next up, Virtuoso for Google, DeepMind, and Innovator for OpenAI. And that absolutely includes what you're speaking about there, automating research. The better place to look for that, besides the AGI countdown, is the ASI checklist. And I've just spent quite a bit of time talking about this, but we'll talk about it again. LifeArchitect.ai/ASI. This looks at after ASI begins, and we're pretty much in the technological singularity where things are going so fast that we can't keep up with them. These are the first 50 things that I think we'll see after that ASI has, or an ASI system has been made available. We probably won't get access to it as the public. I think Google will have a Gemini 5 internally that they can use to check some of these things off. Something like the first new element added to the periodic table, come up with by our an N+2 model, maybe an N+1 model. Maybe Gemini 4 will help us out with that. What else do we have? Solving all mental health conditions. Solving all physical conditions. What about the very first new type of energy discovered? Wouldn't that be exciting to see? We go all the way through to some things that seem silly now, but you just watch this space. Faster than light travel developed. You wait for that one. A new state of matter being engineered, and maybe 45 plus, or 45 more. We've documented things that have given me indications that we're close to this. And this is a fairly big read. We might have a dozen or more examples of where particular professors have said, this is doing X, Y, and Z. This helped me write my proof or conjecture, or this solved my proof in a particular way. And yeah, once again, that's a lot of reading, but this gives you some indication of how far along we are into both automating researchers and then automating research, coming up with completely new discoveries. And this is mostly discovery listed out here, lifearchitect.ai/ASI. I'm nearly ready to wrap up. Oh, that's a really good question, Tommyist. I don't have a specific answer to this. Do you think Gemini 3 is leveraging neurosymbolic architectural elements on top of or in addition to its LLM architecture? I don't have a specific answer to this, but I would love to see these models start using different data sets. And it's not clear to me that Google DeepMind have not used very different data sets. LifeArchitect.ai/Cosmos lists... Where am I? No, this is the video one, sorry. LifeArchitect.ai/Aurora GPT talked about an academic model where they were using all sorts of data, including cosmology data, bacterial and viral information, exascale Earth modeling information. Some of these data sets were fascinating to me. Cosmology code is definitely in there. 600 trillion tokens of stuff about our Earth and our universe. But I bet you can try and list your own multimodal data that just doesn't seem to have been put in these models yet, but might be soon. I bet we can ask Gemini 3 about that. Hypothesize about types of multimodal data that might be used to train the next generation of frontier LLM world model. Put it in a table We already have video and cosmology data. What else? Cool. Good question from Tommy again. I wonder if anything super will come out of Meta AI's or Meta's Super Intelligence Lab. Let's see. Oh yeah, good point there from Bone Circuit. One way of deploying that system prompt is just to flag a URL instead. So you could put those instructions into a repo, and then you could reference that in a prompt, and then it's easier to change. That's definitely a good way of doing it. Although if you've turned off web access for the models, which you should do during testing, unless you're testing for grounding, you won't be able to reference your prompt. I don't update the LLM reset very often anyway. All right, here we go. Gemini suggested we might have some haptic and tactile data, proprioceptive and kinematic data, or RF and Wi-Fi data, absolutely. Olfactory and chemical, we just talked about that. We have some models that have used olfactory data sets, but I just don't see them yet in the frontier models, and I think they'd be really interesting, even inside frontier models and world models on top of a humanoid. Obviously, you and I don't use it at our desk here or at work, but it would be good that my 1X Neo or my my Figure 04 when it comes out, or my UBTech S3 Walker when it comes out, or my Xpong Iron version 2 can detect gas, or can say this home needs a particular fragrance. Let's use some scent branding like the hotels, or anything else you can do with fragrance and olfactory around the house. Genomic and proteomic, neurological, software traces, network traffic, geospatial and climate, particle physics. I don't think that's everything. I think we're missing some multimodal data that would help us out there. We've definitely just used the best model to think through that one. That's Gemini 3 Thinking, Gemini 3 Pro Thinking. I'm going to pass this along to 5.1 Pro. I don't know if this will be able to finish by the end of our live stream, but let's see how it goes. Welcome to Cole, one of our old guard. Cool to have people that have been with us for a full 5 years or so of pre-GPT-4. We were there with the GPT-3 stuff for all of leader experiments. And back at that art page that I mentioned earlier, you can see some of the things that we were excited about back in 2021 that would seem ridiculous now. Here's a prompt. Coldplay Chris Martin concert, Comic Unreal Engine, and this is the output that we were impressed by. What is that? 5 years ago, January 2021 to the end of 2025. We're going to be in January 2026 before we know it. Same kind of output with the same model. Love, peace, joy, kindness, ArtStation HQ. We used to add these kinds of keywords for it to look inside its synapses and emulate stuff that had come out of that ArtStation platform. Greta Thunberg, climate change campaigner. And this was impressive. This was like the dream stuff that came out of Google, and how far we've come in just a few years. Prompt was LifeArchitect. Our output was that one. Kind of fun to see just how advanced we have got. This video is from 4 years ago, December 2021, with Glide, and just showing the interfaces, which have changed a lot. Oh, this is an interface inside a Colab notebook using Google, and the outputs, which again were exciting for the time, but kind of look ridiculous now. I mean, we've just got the highest resolution now compared to that one. It's supposed to be a Studio Ghibli landscape. All right, in the background, we've got Pro Thinking, still thinking. Under the hood, it shows us what it's doing, but I don't know how well it's going to do. Oh, come on, Cole. I've hit my 40s now. Sometimes I feel a bit older. Sometimes I feel quite a bit younger. But we won't be ageist here. Personal invite while this is generating to come and join us at the memo, LifeArchitect.ai/memo, used by all the big players from, just name your favorite company. If you've got a favorite company, if you don't, just name a big company. Everyone from Microsoft to NASA to Google to Cirque du Soleil is in there. And it's really become the source of truth for a lot of people. It probably sounds a little bit dramatic for me to say that, but if you're reading a paper by Microsoft or Apple, you can be sure that it will reference some part of the memo or the models table or the wider LifeArchitect.ai site. So pretty proud of how far we've come with that. We're towards 200 editions over 4 years. And like I just mentioned, these editions are used as a source of truth in some of the big papers, including the UI JEPA paper by Apple that used Meta AI's model. Some of the MIT stuff finds its way around the world, and that's kind of fun to see. You're welcome to join us. The full fee for that one is up there. I've mentioned before that I was born into a lower socioeconomic area, so there is a pay what you want, pay what you can option there, particularly for developing countries. India and Brazil very well represented there. Malaysia, Indonesia also in there. But if you've got financial consideration as well, there's also the option to pay what you can. LifeArchitect.ai/memo. In the background here, we've still got GPT-5 Pro thinking, giving it a go. Who knows how long this would take? I have seen this take more than half an hour, and it's possible that this one just keeps going. Ben Gortzel is a really interesting reference there. I know someone's mentioning him in the chat. In the LifeArchitect.ai/cheese page, here's the earliest version of someone saying, "Who moved my cheese?" And I'm going to have to show this quote. He said it, he's on record. People pull me up all the time and use my words to quote myself. I don't think I've said anything that I can think of that I wouldn't agree with. I did once say that the synchron stentrode, which is actually made next door here in Melbourne, and it comes up through the jugular and then back around through the brainstem. I did say that was not a, what's that term? It's not a invasive BMI. I didn't mean non-invasive, I meant less invasive, but that's one example of where I said the wrong thing, probably on a live stream, and people didn't like it. The Neuralink itself, you have to still drill out a coin-sized or a bottle cap-sized circle from the skull and then put the threads through the brain. The synchron stentrode is less invasive in that we're not drilling bone out of the skull. We're coming up through the jugular, back around into the brainstem with some fine mesh that just sits there. We're going to get non-invasive. We're going to get a cap or a scarf or a tattoo or a plaster or a band-aid where we have complete access to these AI models. And how cool is that going to be? I've just distracted myself. Here's Ben Gortzel's original quote from December 2020. He should have known better. GPT-3 was out. He said, "GPT has no more to do with AGI than my toaster oven does. You're not going to make GPT-4, GPT-5, GPT-6, GPT-7 and get AGI." Well, yeah, that's very unfortunate that he's gone on record with that one. You can make up your own mind. Our GPT 5.1 Pro thinking is finished. I think it's added LiDAR, CAD, spatial audio and sound. That was not in Gemini's, I don't think. Mocap and biomechanics. We had biomechanics in there previously. Oh, egocentric AR or XR. So Google are already doing this with their Gemini Robotics-ER. Gemini Robotics ER models are taking in first-person camera for training. Figure, I'm sure, is doing something similar. Their partnership with Brookfield across hundreds of thousands of residential and commercial premises gives them access to the walkarounds that would be delivered as part of a real estate listing. Eye tracking, pupil response, cursor traces. Wow, I don't think you'd actually need that, but who knows? We, at the moment, do quite well with having the cursor in GPT-5, or is it pretending to have a cursor? Browse the web for top LLMs. And we can see it here, create its own browser window, and it does move its cursor out of the page. I'll take my cursor off the page here. I'm completely hands-off in this moment. It's supposed to be setting up its desktop, setting up its browser. It's in agent mode. I do have a pro account here. I'll take my cursor off the page again. That cursor there, I'm not sure whether it is kind of a pretend cursor, like a placeholder or not. I have seen it click around Google Sheets, but I don't know if it's been trained on cursor tracing. That's the first time I've seen that as an option. Kind of interesting to see. Why are you using Zapier and TOT? That's a little bit far outside. Have you tried agent mode in GPT lately? It's still very slow, but it's very interesting to see what's possible. That cursor hasn't moved this whole time, by the way. All right, I might tab back out of that for us. Oh, this is interesting. So GPT-5 suggests that we might also need some sort of neural signals from ECG, EMG, fMRI stuff. Training on that would be interesting. Gemini also gave us the olfactory and taste sensor arrays. Also gave us all of the radio data, cosmology data. I think it missed seismic. Interesting. Laboratory and industrial instrumentation logs from our CERN accelerator, plasma spectrometers, microscopes, fab, power grids. Wow. So this came up recently in a discussion on the Memo Roundtable, which runs every couple of weeks. You're welcome to join that as a Memo full subscriber. We have some really interesting discussions. It's a roundtable, so I don't lead it or run it. It's everyone gets to ask or tell whatever they'd like to do. Economy, supply chain, mobility traces, very interesting. CPU traces, execution traces. Yes, GUI traces again from the document model. Agent simulations, including traffic, game engine sims. Wow, electron microscopy videos. That's very interesting too. Nanoscale imaging. This is a much longer list than Gemini. Gravitational wave, neutrino, and cosmic ray observatories. And lastly, BCI invasive arrays. I'm sure that Neuralink are keeping track of their, what are we up to, 9 or 10? Or maybe we're up to 12 different Neuralink patients, and Synchron have their Stentrode patients here in Australia that I think we're up to 5 or 6. Could be wrong with those counts. Excellent. Cole's finding a little bit of filtering with with Nano Banana's public figures in the UK and Europe. I saw some excellent and very funny examples of our US leader combined with a very controversial figure who may or may not have non-alived himself. That's I'm bringing up some controversies here, but the Nano Banana model was able to generate figures of them embracing and doing stuff that I thought would have been filtered out. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, you're invited to join the Memo, LifeArchitect.ai/Memo. I'll be back when there's another exciting model. It's possible that we will make these live streams more regular for the end of the year into January, February, but let's see how we go. If you want to stay up to date, the Memo is the best place to do it. Thanks again for joining, and I reckon I'll see you soon. For those in Europe in particular, thank you for staying up so late.
Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah,
Yeah, I have the memo right here.
Superintelligence is unfolding at lightning pace. Read my industry-grade analysis of AI that matters as it happens in plain English, the memo.
Yeah. Did you get that memo?
Yeah, I got the memo.
Get the inside look as AI models are embodied into humanoids, AI's IQ increases to nearly perfect, and bleeding-edge use cases expand to the entire world.
Yeah. Didn't you get that memo?
Editions are sent to subscribers at Fortune 500s, major governments, and people like you. LifeArchitect.ai/memo.
I have the memo.